I think, my Jewish learning. I have known you for a number of years, and I'm very glad and honored to be taking all of you on a tour of Jewish India. And I see it's an overwhelming response, and I can see that we are all waiting to travel. So why don't, as Dani said, begin the year traveling to Jewish, India. So Dani, we can thank you, and we
I'll
can
share the video now, and we will get our journey going, as we say.
Yeah. So through a film and through slides, we are going to show you the story of Jewish India. And of course,
Bene Israel community is unique and different from the rest of the world Jewry, with the fact that once they arrived in India with this very difficult kind of a shipwreck and had lost all their religious books, their religious practices were based on only three things: Shabbat, Kashrut, and Brit Milah. They kept Kashrut completely, they kept Shabbat to the large extent possible, and they were continuing the Brit Milah. There was no contact between the Bene Israels who landed here with the shipwreck with the world Jewry. They lost contact for centuries.
My name is...
Yes, we'll go to slide 1 now. The next one, please. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. So being the pandemic years, this is a photo which resonates more with all of us, but more so with the story of the Jews of India. Right now, we are in the same storm, but different boats, a different boat. Each one is in a different boat. Each is undergoing or is on their own journey. Why am I talking about a shipwreck or the storm right now when we're going to think of a wonderful travel through Jewish India? Because the Bene Israel story is exactly a shipwreck. It wasn't an arrival which came planned, or it came for money, or it came for business, but it was a group of Jewish travelers around 2,200 years ago. Okay, we're looking at around 175 BCE at the times of King Antiochus. Yeah, a group of Jewish people running away from the part of Israel. Some say it's the northern part of Israel, who were moving away from a culture where the Jews were being Hellenized. And it's an incident kind of just before the Hanukkah festival. The Jews were moving out. We do not know to where. Some say towards a port called Nala Supara, which is Ophir, the port of Ophir, which is somewhere near Bombay. Some say they were headed towards Yemen or to Aden. But unfortunately, at sea, there was a shipwreck. And in this shipwreck, hundreds of people died in the shipwreck. And close to about, we say a symbolic or a number, was a very small number. 7 to 10 pairs of people survived the shipwreck. And it was these survivors of this shipwreck whose ancestors my family belongs to, and the people whom we called ourselves. When we landed off this little village of Alibaug, you saw in the film, where you see the ocean. So just off Alibaug, which is 110 kilometers outside of Bombay, is the Jewish ancestors. Our ancestors arrived, and we call them ourselves the Bene Israels. So we weathered the storm. It's the corona storm this year, but altogether we will all come out stronger and continue to be stronger and together. So same storm, different boats. The next, please. Okay. Yeah. So this is where I am, Mumbai. At the time of the Jewish arrival, Mumbai as a city did not exist. because Bombay as a city, we call it Bombay, today we call it Mumbai. But Bombay as a city at one time were 7 islands. And this really did not exist until the Portuguese came to these islands around 1664. And it is the Portuguese who kind of reclaimed these 7 islands to give us this beautiful landmass, okay, with a beautiful bay and the ocean there, which is called Bombay. And as the important landmark of Bombay city, or Mumbai as we call it today, is the Gateway of India. The Gateway of India is a beautiful arch which welcomes you into the city, which was built in 1911 to welcome King George V and Queen Mary. Okay, when they came for the big darbar in, to India. It is from this Gateway of India that we head along back into the interiors of the country to where the Jewish communities first arrived 2000 years ago and continued to live there until the British again came in the 1800s and we came back to Bombay. Therefore, this is the city and where the majority of the Jews today live in India. Our population today is about 4,500 people all over India, maybe even 4,000 with the number of aliyahs which are happening currently. So around 4,000 Jews. Majority of the Jews continue to live within Bombay city and smaller numbers into the other places like in Calcutta, Pune, a few in Delhi, another 50 people in the original coastal villages. Yeah, so this is Bombay or Mumbai. Next, please, yeah. So coming to the Jews of India or the Bene Israels, this is the photograph of both our parents. So the one on the right side is these are the photographs of my husband's parents, Ralphie's parents, which is Ezekiel and Esther Jhirad. And these are my father and mother, Jeremiah and Sheba Nagaukar. The Bene Israels very typically had their names, which were the names of the villages where the Jewish people came years ago. So they were shipwrecked. 10 pairs of people survived. They had no way to describe who they were. The hundreds of people who died were buried in those little, were buried in little mounds dug in the soil. But the people who continued in those villages adopted the names of the villages as their last names. So typically a Bene Israel surname always ends with a Kar. So my last name is a Nagaukar. And of course, Jhirad also is a Jhirad Kar, but as some people then just continue to retain the name of the village, Jhirad. And as we see in this picture, the Bene Israels continue to live a very small traditional lifestyle. And at the time of the marriage, it really speaks as to how the Jewish people or the Bene Israel stayed amongst their groups, because most of the marriages way back then were arranged marriages. Yeah, families arranged the marriages. And so the numbers continue to be within themselves with very little, assimilation. And then you remember also that we were in an India which had its own, its own divisions of caste, religion, creed, and everyone kept to themselves. And in this atmosphere, the Jewish community lived in freedom, okay, in freedom of doing what they were doing in terms of their religion for thousands of years, actually for over 1,000 years, just the Shema Israel, okay, observing Shabbat, like Shabbat was just the day of rest. There were no religious books or texts or advances, or the changes in the Jewish religion as it was happening across the world was not known to these people. It was probably a lost tribe, a lost group. But the Bene Israels lived in these villages amongst themselves. So you see them, but then as they come into Bombay city, they westernize, they change their clothing a bit. But the woman or the lady is always in a sari, but the groom is in a Western outfit, yeah, the Western clothes. Both the Indian Jewish people, once they came under the influence of the British India, they immediately took up the changes that British India adopted or offered to them, namely in terms of education. So both our parents were highly educated, both our fathers and mothers were highly educated, and that education then of course continued into the next generations. Yes, so The next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Yes. So the synagogues became really much later the center of Jewish life. And this I'm talking about when the Jews from the villages here at this stage, when I'm talking about my family, yeah, talks about how synagogues became the center of Jewish life. It was the center of the community. Yeah, it was led by an honest, sincere band of community members. They were volunteers. So in this picture here, you see my father. Again, they're receiving guests who came to the synagogue. And probably this is at the time when the Zionist organizations were coming to India to ask the Jewish community to make Aliyah. We are looking at in the late 40s, 50s, even until the 60s. And you see some of the men still wearing the traditional clothes. And you see some of them wearing a traditional Indian hat. You see this? It's a cap which Nehru or Mahatma Gandhi wore. And you call it as the Gandhi topi or the Gandhi hat. Yeah, and some of them in their Western clothes. So this is actually in the porch of the oldest synagogue of Bombay, to which my father belonged. And he prayed there like all his life, in fact, almost until the time he really could not move, which was the Gate of Mercy Synagogue or Sha'ar HaRahamim, which was in fact the first synagogue built in the island city of Bombay way back in 1796. Yeah, I grew up in this synagogue. A whole community grew around that neighborhood from 1796. They left those villages to come to Bombay to take the opportunities that the ports, the trade and commerce was offering to the Jewish people, as well as education, right? So the Gate of Mercy, 1796, and which also has a beautiful story as to how it was built, so this is where you see my father and the trustees or the board of the synagogue. And our parents were, like my father was constantly aware of what was happening in Israel. By this time, his brothers in early 1947 and 50s have made Aliyah. He continues to live in Israel, but he is very much aware of what are the changes happening in the state of Israel. And so when after the 1967, the independence or getting Jerusalem back, when you have this book of Yael Dayan and how Moshe Dayan, who is the leader of that time, how Yael Dayan very passionately writes about her father. When I was born, almost a year or two later, my father named me Yael. Not an easy name for an India, but also not easy amongst the Jewish community, because apparently it's a biblical name. Yael is a name from the Bible. She's a biblical hero. She's a prophetess. So, but she is Yael, a modern Israeli name. So much so that, as I said, our parents were the traditional family. So most of our marriages were arranged. And similarly with me, my marriage and my husband's marriage was an arranged marriage, right? So we kind of barely knew each other like 6 days before we were engaged to be married. And, and later when people knew that, my husband, who was more active in the community, he knew that he's married and his wife is a Yael, there were questions, or people always said, oh, you're marrying an Israeli. And my father had this, very all-knowing mischievous smile on his face, because he was very proud that he had given me this very, happening Israeli name. And I could only just say in my mind, to my husband, better luck next time. But I couldn't say to him anything like that, because, ours were an arranged marriage. I didn't know him much. And we got to know each other over the years, but our parents were certainly for this match, and we went ahead with our marriage. So today we're married 31 years. And so I guess that's a little bit about me as a Yael in India.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Yeah. The next one, yeah. So coming to a synagogue, a Bene Israel synagogue. These were centers of Jewish life. What did I do, or what did we do as a Jewish family, or as an institution, or as a group, was everything in the synagogue to maintain, whether it was marriages, it was brit milas, it were birthday parties, it was anniversaries, even Aliyahs, before people left for Aliyah, they went to Israel. Where did they house themselves? They housed them in the home, in the rooms belonging to the synagogues. So this is a Bene Israel synagogue here, and this is one in Panvel. And you can see very typically, it is beautifully, the Aron Kodesh is made of teak wood, okay? And the Jewish community who lived in the coastal villages very typically became expert, carpenters. And most of the woodwork that they created or they did was all done by the Jewish carpenters themselves. That was one of their skills. That was one of their occupations. And you see the very typical Ner Tamid light. This is a synagogue in Panvel. And always in a Bene Israel synagogue, you see two chairs, yeah? These are the chairs of Eliyahu Navi. Okay, one is a chair of Eliyahu Navi and a chair for the Brit Milah, the Kisei Eliyahu, and a light. You do not see this in other synagogues, but the Bene Israel synagogues very typically have an oil lamp for Eliyahu Navi. Yeah, so this light is lit every day, or when people make a Malida. This is a Malida. First of all, Eliyahu Navi. Elijah the prophet, yeah, he's Eliyahu Navi, and he's written about. You can read, those who are with Jewish education. He's mentioned in Kings 1 and in Kings 2. The miracles he performed, the inspiration he caused, and his dramatic ascent to heaven. Yeah, Prophet Elijah, they say, is the one who comes down on earth to help the Jews, to comfort Jews who were lost or who are sad or in trouble. And that is the belief of the Bene Israel Jews when they were lost from the whole Jewish world. It's like you are totally like finished. You are lost from where you arrived, your books are gone, your belongings are gone, and only a few people survive and the rest are no more. Who gives courage to these people to survive and to go on? They say is a vision or a belief or a story amongst the Bene Israels that Prophet Elijah makes a vision to this lost community coming on a chariot, okay? And from this chariot, amongst thunder and lightning, he descends on this rock, and then from there he takes off into heaven. This is Eliyahu Navi to the Bene Israels. How do we know it's true? How do we know it's false? But in the villages where the Bene Israels lived off the Konkan coast, there is a neighborhood called as Khandala. And in Khandala, there is a huge rock on which you can still see the marks of the chariot and the imprints of the horse hooves. For over 2,000 years, this is the story and the belief of the Bene Israels. This is also the belief of the local neighborhood. The little population which lives there revere that spot for us. There are no more Jews left in India today. There are very few Jews. But the local Hindu community looks after that space for us. And what do the Jews go there and do? To Prophet Elijah, to Prophet Eliyahu Navi, what do? We always invite him into our homes on auspicious occasions. What are auspicious occasions? Pre-marriage ceremonies, you're getting a new job, you're retiring from your work, you're getting a new business, a henna ceremony, a pre-wedding ceremony, even before you prepare for a wedding, even before you print a wedding card, we make an Eliyahu Navi ceremony at home. It's a song of Eliyahu Navi, of Prophet Elijah. But it's not just the song, it's with devotion. And once you're invited to this ceremony, you have to attend. There is no way you refuse that invitation. It's an honor to be invited to someone's Malida ceremony. Malida is this preparation, what I'm showing you. It's pounded rice, it's with sugar and coconut. And you keep offerings or you keep fruits, basically. So you have a flour, so on which you say the baraka of Besamim, you say Hayetz, you say Ha'adama, and you have the Malida. What is a Malida? I guess it comes from the Hebrew word molad, the new beginning, to begin again. So anything to new beginnings, to say gratitude, to say thanks, it's Eliyahu Navi, and this is the Malida platter, and this is the chair of Eliyahu Navi. We have the Eliyahu Navi light, which the people will light before you read the Malida. Generally, there is a belief that this event or the Tu Bishvat ceremony, which is coming now very soon unto the Jewish world, onto our, to us, we just do not do only the blessing on the fruit. For us, it is with the Malida ceremony. We make this whole platter, and then we say an offering or say the Shehiyanu or the Shekianu prayer on the new fruit. But the Malida is this offering. Yeah, so this is very, very important tradition of the Bene Israel community, the Eliyahu Nabi ceremony. This is a synagogue in Panvel. This is, I would say, about 90 kilometers, 80 kilometers outside of Bombay, where people have great faith in the synagogue, and people have had very miraculous results, in terms of if someone has been ill or ill health, someone's not been able to have a child, to go and make a Malida in this synagogue, asking for your wishes. People have seen miraculous results, and so this is our synagogues and one of a very important Bene Israel tradition. Yeah. So am I clear to everyone?
Yeah, it's coming really, really well, Yael. I wonder, do you want to take a quick break and we can show a little video?
Yes, that'd be lovely, yes.
Okay. Just want to stop the sharing. Nope. Okay, let me get out of it. There we go. I can see my cursor again. Wonderful. Okay, here we go, everyone. Another quick trip into some visuals of Jewish India. Well, keep going. I'm gonna prep the video correctly. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. If you want to keep talking a little bit.
Yeah. So I see a lot of. Well, I am certainly a member of this community, so I am speaking from my personal or my first-hand experiences as growing up Jewish in India, but I've also had opportunities to learn and be with scholars who've studied our community, and I can see Professor Joanne Rowland has joined this talk and has made great contribution to what our community has done. I have studied and worked as in terms of tours with Professor Nathan Katz, who's done phenomenal work not only with the Bene Israel community, but also with the Kochini Jewish community, and people who have passionately shared the Jewish knowledge, Rabbi Marvin Tokayer. Yeah, so they've all made my knowledge and have also made us kind of known and our history, shared our history with the rest of the Jewish world. Yeah.
And so, that's a great segue into this part of the video to talk about the different Jewish communities that you were mentioning in India. So here we go.
Only when the Cochin Jews got the news about this community, they even not were called Jews. David Rahabi, one of the rabbis from Cochin, came to Bombay and observed these people and particularly followed the women when they went to the bazaars, to the markets to buy fish. And he observed that they did not buy any meat. They only bought fish which had fins and scales. That means they were very particular about keeping kashrut. And when he followed them to the home, they saw that they were not mixing that with any milk. They had some vessels which were separate. And so those observations caught his attention, and he started to give them teachings on the religious aspects. And these community members picked up and they became more observant. And that's how their revival started to take place. Thereafter, the Baghdadi community came in the early 19th century from Baghdad. And as we all know, they also came from a very difficult situation during the Dawood Pasha's rule, which was very difficult rule. So they escaped from there.
I am the caretaker for Magen David Synagogue I'm one of the Iraqi Jews. My father and mother, they were from Baghdad. I was born over there. I live in Bombay now for several years. I look after the Magen David Synagogue.
And the leader of that community, one of the members, was David Sassoon. And he came actually escaping the degree of Daud Pasha to hang him. He was told, go to India and you will make fortune. And it so happened that he was called the Rothschild of the East. He established several businesses and was very close to the British. And he gave a lot of encouragement to religious aspects of the community, established synagogues, established community centers, all that happened in 19th and 20th century beginning. So that was the second revival for the Bene Israel community as well. Recently, we have seen some marriages taking place between the Baghdadi and the Bene Israel Jews, Bene Israel and Kochini Jews. A cousin of mine got married to a Cochin Jew. So there is some interaction, but largely the Bene Israels are now predominant in the community. Out of the 5,000 Jews all over India, more than 4,700 are the Bene Israel Jews. 250 are the Baghdadi Jews, and remaining 50 are the Kochini Jews.
And I think we should mention, Yael, that this is Ralphie. This is your husband who is speaking.
Yes. He's another person I should thank for me having this knowledge today. Not that I was, I knew my community, but not to the extent that today I can sit and talk in front of all of you. Yes.
If you'd like, Yael, I can go back to the PowerPoint. Yes, or?
Okay. Anything else you need to? Yeah.
No, we can go back to
basically
the...
in Bombay, what the film showed is about two communities. You have the Bene Israel Jews and the Iraqi Jews. I will come a smaller presentation of the Iraqi Jews, but made great contributions to the city of Mumbai and to India, kind of known as the Rothschilds of the East. And yes, and their presence still stands in landmark buildings like the Knesset Eliyahu Synagogue or the David Sassoon Library, or, the Sassoon docks where the fresh catch of fish comes in every morning. Yeah. And so, yes, and here we continue on our journey on the Jews of Bene Israel Jews, and we come towards Alibaug. Yeah, this is one of the villages where the Jewish people community lived. And you can see it against the backdrop of the coconut trees and the betel nut trees. And you see this beautiful synagogue and of course, a very beautiful a beautiful mezuzah. Yeah, we all know of the Taj Mahal in Agra made of marble. But how could we not use marble onto our beautiful, in our beautiful mezuzah? And where if you see in this synagogue, there is a small portion of it is carved out is the kotel, the Wailing Wall. Yeah, and the Magen David and the menorah. So the Alibaug synagogue, where the Jews lived, they were landowners. They had coconut plantations. They also were into oil pressing. That was one of the traditional occupations. One of the first occupations of the Bene Israel Jews were the oil pressers. They were known as the Saturday oil men. Why were they Jewish? They did certain practices and traditions, even though they'd lost and broken off from mainstream Judaism, or they were not connected in a way. They practiced Judaism to what they could, observing Shabbat, Kashrut, yeah. They knew this skill about extracting oil. So making, extracting oil out of a bitter seed, yeah, which was first used in boats, when there was before no greases and chemical-based greases. That was the oil they used, or they was used for oil lamps. And later they started to extract groundnut oil or coconut oil for food. Yeah, this was the traditional occupation of the Bene Israels. Today, you all know in the world, everyone is into, cold pressed virgin coconut oil. But this is what our grandmothers and great grandmothers ate all their life. Yeah, and this is what the Bene Israels are known as the coconut or the Saturday oil pressers, because they kept their oil mills or oil presses closed on Saturday. So they were called the Shanivar Telis. Whereas the other community of oil pressers, when they were engaged in this business, they kept it closed on, say, on a Monday. So they were the Somvar Telis. The Bene Israels are very typically called the Shanivar Telis. So this is in Alibaug. That belt of the Konkan coast may have today something around 50 families living there, but living happily within and successfully amongst the people, and still continuing the heritage of the Indian Jews. Yeah, the next one, please. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is after how the Jews lived. It's very important as how they kept. Then when we were rediscovered or kind of found out by David Rahabi around 1000 century, so how did we come back to mainstream Judaism, and then how did we learn about other festivals? But what were the festivals we observed even before? Biblical holidays or biblical festivals. So basically Passover was in a way kind of, the Bene Israels, remember, they did it, but not as Passover, but it was a festival as a festival which was called on this day. They closed all their doors for this week, and they took out everything which had kind of a foamy aspect. So was it the foam of buttermilk, or was it the foam of, fermented coconut? So these kind of elements were taken out. Everything was brought fresh produce from the market. You can see it's now during the pandemic that you see in Alibaug village, where the women come with their fresh vegetables from their own backyard. And a very important element is all food to abide with strict kashrut was made at home. And how do you know it's Passover? Because during these times, the Bene Israel Jews stopped buying any commercial products off the shelf, even if they are spices. Everything is made freshly at home. And the most important spice to any Indian food, or color to any Indian food, or health for Indian food, is the turmeric. And we use fresh turmeric or kurkuma. Yeah, people today take turmeric pills. This is how it is to be eaten, blended slowly into any of your food items, not raw, but it has to blend, release its oils into a food item. So fresh elements of food are used in, turmeric is used typically during Passover cooking. Matzah, of course, commercial branding products are not available, but we eat rice. As a community, we continue to eat rice. We specially grind rice in a flour mill, which is washed and koshered for Passover grinding. The rice is washed by us at home. We dry it in the sun. We make our own flour in this machine. In Thane community, which is in Mumbai, outside of Bombay in a way, the women keep a day before Passover where each one comes in with the rice they will need and grind their own flour. And that we make flat rice bread for Passover. You can see this is like very healthy rice flour rotis, or flat bread. It's not gluten, it's very light, and it's like kind of almost steamed. So that's for Passover. Another important or typical way the Bene Israel celebrate is Tisha B'Av. They observe it very seriously because kind of we believe that the Bene Israel shipwrecked. These groups, we were lost from the main groups around the time of Tisha B'Av, because when these survivors came alive, or they came out of that shock or hunger, they looked around. What did they find to eat? Were these sprouted seeds. Okay, these seeds of like field beans. Yeah, they are dried field beans, but you kind of hydrate it in water, or if it's under soil, they sprout. And these sprouted seeds was what they first ate and sustained the lost survivors 2,200 years ago. And the Bene Israels will use this during Tisha B'Av we eat this to break our fast. Yeah, and then make a curry out of this, which is then the vegetable to be eaten, but the fast is broken on these seeds. These are very typical or very special traditions found in the Bene Israel community, which also traces back somehow our roots to Jewish practices or customs, because some Passover is a lunar festival. So it's like lunar. So the people were able to observe, and Tisha B'Av because of the seeds which sustained us way back, or our ancestors 2000 years ago. Yeah. Largely we kept kashrut. We would eat, the fish, as you know, being a coastal region, the Bene Israels had, unlimited options of kosher fish. And that was, of course, one of the tests that David Rahabi gave the women, that you should eat like how they would cook a meal for him. And it was the kosher fish that the Jewish community, ate. And of course, we eat chicken or lamb's meat. With respect to our local Hindu neighborhoods, well, we did not really, encourage a lot of beef eating, or, we did not really go much in that direction, because to our Hindu neighbors, the cow is more sacred, more holy. So in my family and my husband's family, we do not eat beef at all, or we do not even have beef anymore in our community. Yes. So the next, thank you. Yeah, Dani? Yeah. Okay. So we speak of the Jews of India, the Bene Israel Jews, and how the Jews lived in total harmony with, with the neighbors, and how the Indian Jews prospered under the British rule. They went into highest positions of civil service, or government service. And after that, they went into the Indian government service, whether it was the Post and Telegraph, the Indian Railways, the Customs, and Central Excise. And we all know that, this story will not be complete without our gratitude to India, how India has been, welcoming. Judaism is the first foreign religion in India, and how the Jews have been welcomed. And there is no anti-Semitism in this country, and people have been free to follow and practice their religion. And in this story, we must not forget about the Jews who also come in this story of the Indian Jews. There is a very valuable contribution of the Western Jews, the Jews who came to India from the Western world. And there are two stories I think are very relevant to today's time. And namely, I would take the story of Dr. Waldemar Mordecai Hafkin, to which the government honored by releasing a postal stamp. Yeah, you can see his a postal stamp has been released in his honor by the government of India. And who was Waldemar Hafkin? Yeah, he was born in 1860 at Odessa. And he became later a French citizen, and he worked at the Pasteur Institute in Paris. And he is the one who developed the cholera vaccine that was successfully tested in India and saved millions of lives in India. He is recognized as the first microbiologist who developed and used vaccines against cholera and later against bubonic plague. He publicly tested the vaccine on himself to give confidence to others to take this vaccine. Okay, and he was honored by the Queen. He was knighted. And the Hafkin Institute, or the Plague Research Institute of that time, of the British, 1860s, that when he came towards Bombay, he has today been called as the Hafkin Institute, and in his honor. And a postal stamp was released in 1964 towards his, in honor of his contribution towards vaccine research. And in today's times, when we are again in the era of vaccine and belief and disbelief, we think of how Hafkin came to India and did his work. And of course, even after he finished his work, he went back and he settled in Switzerland, where he died in 1930. Not much is known about Hafkin, but it is a matter of pride that a Jewish scientist or a microbiologist contributed so much to vaccines way back, in the 1900s. So you have Waldemar Hafkin. Another important figure I want to talk about is of Walter Kaufmann. Millions of Indians woke up to this tune that we are going to play for you just now. And it was a tune which was played on the All India Radio. Who was Walter Kaufmann? Let's first listen to this tune. If Dani will share it for me, please.
Yep. Just give me a second to stop the sharing. Oh, okay, good. Okay, Doki, here we go.
Our family began, like we woke up to this radio tune and started to get ready for school. My mother would start cooking breakfast from this. It was this that we started, and we knew it was breakfast time, and 7 o'clock we have to be in school. So we will listen to this. A little back. Yeah, the beginning only. The first, yes. That's yeah. So this is what we all woke up to every morning. Millions of Indians woke up to this tune. We knew nothing of it, but this was All India Radio. It has been composed by Walter Kaufmann. Walter Kaufmann was a composer, conductor, and ethnomusicologist born in 1907 at Karlsbad, Bohemia, at that time a part of Austria and Hungary. He trained in the best music schools in Prague and Berlin before fleeing Nazi persecution of the Jews and came to Bombay in February 1934 until 1948. He was the director of music at All India Radio, and this is the signature tune composed by him. His reasons for coming to India were very simple. In his interview, he said, "I could easily get a visa." He found Indian music very alien and incomprehensible. But he did not give up. He was a musicologist, and he said, if millions of Indians are enjoying and appreciating and loving this music, then the fault is with me. I have to study Indian classical music, which he undertook a study of the Indian classical music, which resulted in many books being published by him, namely the North Indian ragas, the North-South Indian ragas, and this signature tune is his work, which is his blend of his Indian ragas. This is Walter Kaufmann, to all Indians, a Jewish person who came during Nazi, Germany. Yeah. So this is what I felt we had to also, share with you. And if I can, yeah, the next picture, if I can go, can I have the next slide, Manu?
Sure, yep, I'll bring back the PowerPoint. And just to give you a heads up, Yael, we are at the 50-minute mark. We always like to give 10 minutes of questions and answers. So maybe we'll close it soon so we can have the questions, yeah?
Now quickly, and if it's... Next slide, yeah. Next, I can go next, yeah. Yes, next one also. Yes, thank you. Yes, so this is a beautiful photograph of the the back one. The previous one. Dani, the previous one. Yeah. No. Oh. Yes. This is a photograph of the Knesset Eliyahu Synagogue, which has now been beautifully restored, which is an Iraqi synagogue, founded 1884. Yeah. It is a place which still welcomes hundreds of visitors today. And here you see another famous or stalwart of Indian Army, General Jack Jacob, who has written this beautiful autobiography and Odyssey in War and Peace. And he was a war hero who was very instrumental in the liberation of the state of Bangladesh. Yeah, and he was the one who got 90,000 Pakistani soldiers, to publicly surrender. General Niazi and his army of 90,000 soldiers had a public surrender in the formation of the state of Bangladesh. Yes, you can read from his works here. Thank you. The next one, please, Danny. Yeah. So this is again in the Knesset Eliyahu Synagogue. This is one of the other, studies. That's my husband here when he released the book in the presence of, then he was the diaspora minister, but Naftali Bennett, the prime minister today of the state of Israel, Mr. Solomon Sofer, head of the Iraqi Jewish community, and the book by Dr. Saul Sapir, Bombay and Urban Jewish Heritage. So this is how the Jewish community is even in its dates today. And of course, as I said, there is no Jewish community without an India. And as you travel through Jewish India, there will be many India moments. And this is one such India moment that I would like to share with all of you, is that one at the end or early morning tour, going to the docks to see how the fish comes in, where a group of us are sitting in waiting for our cup of tea, the first chai, why not have chai at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there's almost nobody in the restaurant, and the chai takes, the tea, the Indian tea takes a lot of time to come, and people are getting restless, but the tea is not coming, and the manager who is standing just by the counter says, a minute, it will come, and then sure enough, what happens? There comes at the entrance this cow. It's like 1 foot away from entering the restaurant when the manager gets up and the cook from the kitchen comes in holding a plate of hot steaming Indian bread, the rotis. And what do? They feed the cow. The first meal of the day is fed to the cow. The cow is fed, the cow goes away, and then our tea comes in. We start talking to the manager. What's happening? What's this? He says, no, this cow comes to our restaurant every morning. And until the cow eats first, no one eats. And so these are some of the India moments I hope someday when you come to India, you will have to experience. Yeah. And with that, I think, Dani, the next and slide, or I'm open for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Yael, for this incredible presentation. And thank you, of course, Dani, for arranging it. Thank you, Rocky, for the closed captions. And we do have a bunch of questions. We won't have time to get to all of them, but yeah. I'll select a few, and hopefully we can cover a bunch of the topics, because a lot of the questions were on the same topics. So one question had to do with the shipwreck and where the ship was going, and what percentage of the current Jewish population in India descends from this shipwreck as opposed to other more recent immigrations.
See, majority of the Jews in India have always been the Bene Israel Jewish community. And so today what remains of the Jewish community in Bombay are the Bene Israels. Because who are the other arrivals? The Iraqi Jews. They are very small in number today. They are about 40 or 50 people left. And the Kochini Jews are about 20 to 25 in number. So there are a very few Jews. So large of them is the Bene Israel community. And that has been the trend through and through in the country. Yeah, 98% I can say are the Bene Israel Jews.
Okay, thank you. And are there still arranged marriages?
In India, largely, yes. Most of the marriages are arranged marriages, but today with a changed society and a changed India, India is not the same either. We are certainly open to people who find their own match, but we, of course, are certainly inclined to marriages being certainly within the Jewish community. So there is much happiness and pleasure, of course, if the marriage is a match found within the Jewish communities. And yes, today, with social media and travel, I guess, is it, and Bene Israel Jewish groups around the world, the Jews in Israel today, we do try to arrange, if marriages are arranged marriages, yes.
And I see that Dani just put your contact in the chat box. I know a bunch of people were asking how they could contact you. Perhaps they would like to visit at some point. Perhaps they had a follow-up question. So that is in the chat box now, for the folks who were looking for that. Questions about the relationship with Israel and immigration to Israel and how Israel receives Indian Jews.
Okay. See, now this is like, is like a big, it's a story by itself, but I will try to tell you from our family story or from the story of the Indian Jews. See, Indian Jews openly have had a happy life in India. There were no reasons to, panic or leave India. And thankfully, with our neighbors and friends, India has been good to the Jews. But around 1947 and 1948, like that's the time when India became independent, right? The British left their rule and India became independent. And 48, the state of Israel was founded. Many of the Jews wanted to go back to Israel, right? Or they felt they should go to Israel. So the Bene Israels were also, the Zionist organizations came and the Jews started to make Aliyah. Whether the Bene Israel Jews or it was the Jews from Cochin, but more the Bene Israel Jews, I will say. They started to go families, or sometimes two brothers were sent together. And well, the first phase of going to Israel was very hard because Israel by itself was a country, was born, right? So it was a difficult existence, but some went, some did not like it, some found Israel hard because who are these Jews of India who are coming into Israel? Yeah, the first immigration, the first aliyahs, 47, 48, 49. Who are these Jews of India? Are they Jews? Did color stop our coming into Israel easily? There were some challenges in the beginning. But later by the 60s and the 70s, I think by the 70s, things settled and a second wave of immigration started going to Israel. So like if you see in my family, like my father was the only one who stayed behind. My father and his brother were the only ones who stayed in India. With my husband's family, his father was the only one who stayed in India. His 5 sisters, like my husband's 5 aunts and 2 brothers, they made Aliyah way back in 67, 68, 70. And they've been there ever since then. We continued to be here. Our children made their way to Israel. So, and now it is my siblings live in Israel. 3 of my siblings live in Israel. And so, yes, now it is good. And now it is, you can be in Israel and fulfill your dream of, being connecting with your homeland. As the Indian Jews say, India is my motherland and Israel is my fatherland.
I have to interrupt and share. I hope it's okay to share the news that Yael, you were just in Israel celebrating something important, no?
Yes, yes. We were fortunate. Yeah, our older son Nathaniel, exactly a month ago, Dani, 5th of December, the last night of Hanukkah. Nathaniel, our son, was married to his lovely wife and bride, who is also a Yael, and so she's from the United States, and we have achieved one marriage. Yes.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. So
So
it's been good for the Jews in Israel. As I see them today, I feel our synagogues are emptier. But when I see the Bene Israel synagogues in Israel, like I lived with my sister. My sister is in Israel for the last 24 years, and she lives in Kiryat Gat. There are 3 synagogues of the Indian Jewish community in Kiryat Gat. And the Shabbat I went to the synagogue was like, how many? 150, 200 members of the community on a cold Saturday morning. This was not a normal day. It was cold. I don't know, maybe it was cold for me. Very, very cold it was. Oh my God. But there were that many people in the synagogue, and there was a bar mitzvah, and a beautiful bar mitzvah in the Kiryat Gat synagogue of a Bene Israel mother. The mother is a Bene Israel Jew and the father is a Cochini Jew. And they met in Israel. And their son had a bar mitzvah, and the Cochini family had all come down from Nevatim, that is where all the Jews of Cochin lived in a moshav, right? So the Jews of Cochin all made Aliyah together, and they lived in this moshav at Nevatim. So, yes.
Wow, fascinating. It's 12, so maybe we'll finish up with one last question, and then thank everyone. So there were a couple of questions about the practices and in India and the Jewish communities in India, and where they would fall sort of on the denominational spectrum, and whether the Masorti or egalitarian communities is represented. Would it be considered Orthodox, conservative? Is it just not, maybe not in those categories at all? Could you talk a little bit about that?
See, the Bene Israel Jewish community has been a very traditionally observant community. We have been here for 2000 years. So by itself, the Bene Israel community traditionally does not even fall into the traditional division of Sephardic or Ashkenazi. We arrived into India before Judaism became Sephardic or Ashkenazi or anything for that matter. And that is how we continue to live, and we continue to look at ourselves. We don't put ourselves into a group. If someone is observant, you come to the synagogue. If someone decides to not be very observant or a Shomer Shabbat, comes to a synagogue for prayer, also is welcome. So we are traditional communities. We are open to every kind of things. What sustained me in the pandemic? I had no idea of a central synagogue in New York. But for me, by the time Shabbat is over, Central Synagogue in New York was starting their Shabbat services. How did I hold myself the last 2 years? Shabbat was out, it was Saturday night, but I was doing the whole prayer and parasha with them. So I think we should look beyond these boundaries, just look as being Jewish. Each one observe what you want to observe, keep to your roots, but we are largely traditional. We observe kashrut, we'll go to the synagogue, we look out for each other. Yeah, we have organizations which help. I have my group of women whom we are very well connected. We are updated on things happening with our families, with someone's not well. So this is how I would describe the Bene Israel community. Yeah, and yes.
So yeah, right. So you're not post-denominational, you're pre-denominational.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, I would. But you call us, there are people who are like Shomer Shabbat. There is everybody. We are Jews. We are just Jews all together.
Right.
Yeah. But we are traditionally Orthodox. So it's a Orthodox synagogue. If you look at the synagogue structure, we have a Khazan who conducts our services. We have the men and women who sit separately on the regular prayer services. Yeah. So we fall into that kind of patterns, but we are also doing things which would be liberal. Like, as I said, I will attend things which would, like a Masorti organization. Yes, if, their books are in my synagogue. There are prayer books of the Orthodox organizations. And as a community, we would read and participate in that. But we have our own traditions. We have our own halakas, which we follow too.